Looks like we are live. All right, well, we will go ahead and get started. I know we're going to probably have some people joining us over the next few minutes, but I want to be mindful of time because I know everyone has their evening, whether they have plans or different things going on. So I definitely want to try to keep this to an hour if possible. We may go over a little bit, and that's okay. But I just want to, first of all, introduce myself. My name is Kristen Irwin, and I'm the Assistant Director for Career Learning Communities in the Malone Center for Career Engagement. And I'm excited to moderate this exciting panel that we have tonight. And this is our second installment of webinars that we have been creating this summer. We know it's an interesting time for our recent grads who are sort of graduating into an uncertain time. And we know we have a lot of rising students, whether they be seniors or juniors, who are starting to think about what comes next. And so these webinars are providing an opportunity for all of you to get to know some of our great alumni and to hear their perspectives and stories and advice to help you sort of develop your plan for moving forward, for whatever that may be now or into the future. So let me just say real quick that this webinar is done in partnership not only with the Malone Center for Career Engagement, but also too with the Furman University Alumni Association and with the Office of Mentoring and Advising. So all of our offices have great resources to share. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I just wanted to make sure everybody got that credit. So before we get too deep into things, I do want to have you guys respond to a poll question so that all of our panelists have a good idea about who is participating with us tonight. So if you could please respond to what class you are, and also to what do you see as your biggest obstacle in connecting with the Furman Network. If you could respond to those, we'd appreciate it. All right, so it looks like as of now, the largest group of students involved here is the class of 2022, but we do have some recent grads and some rising seniors and a few others. And then when it comes to what you see as your biggest obstacle in connecting with the Furman Network, we still got things coming in here, but it looks like I do not know how to initiate a meeting with a Furman graduate. So we'll definitely cover that today, give you some ideas. It's definitely a tie for being skeptical that the Furman Network can help me. Nervous about reaching out to people I do not know how to find resources and all the above. So hopefully by the end of this evening, all of you will have a good perspective to some of these questions, have some good answers. And if not, we certainly encourage you to set up some follow-up appointments with us after the fact or with the Malone Center. But this will hopefully help give us a good idea as to how to guide our conversation. Thank you for responding to that. There, I think. I don't know if that just popped up now so you guys can see that. All right. So before we get into the intros real quick, I just want to let you guys know that I know a lot of the participants offered Q&A questions, or questions I should say, for us to address later on in the session, and we will do that, I promise, towards the end. So if you do have questions that come up throughout the webinar, please feel free to enter that in the question box, and I'll do my best to monitor that and make sure we cover as much as we can. So to let us kind of kick this off, I would love for the panelists to introduce yourself. And in doing so, if you could just let us know your name, where you live right now, what your current job title is and where you're working. Also too, what you majored in and what types of things you were involved in, I guess from an extracurricular standpoint at Furman, just to get a better sense of who you are. That would be awesome. Who would like to start?
I can pick it up. I
Okay.
guess I'm the old one in the group. I just realized that when I saw the graduation year. So, Adi Filipovic, I was class of '06. I'm currently in Atlanta. I've been in Atlanta for the most part since graduating from Furman. Spent 2 years in Chicago for grad school. I went and got an MBA from the University of Chicago, but for the most part, built my professional career in Atlanta. I was a math and economics major while at Furman. I played football while I was there, and to some extent, I was kind of a quintessential Furman student for the following reason. And maybe not quintessential, depending on how much Furman has changed. Hopefully, I did not think about a career when I got to Furman. I didn't think about career when I was at Furman, and I didn't think about a professional business career when I was leaving Furman. I was good at school, and I was going to go do more schooling. I was going to go get a PhD in economics, and so I had applied to a bunch of PhD programs, and it was by happenstance that I got into the industry. That I got in, which kind of talk more about that. And I got into industry because of Furman connection. I stumbled upon a Furman alum that was 12, 13 years senior to me. He was also a former football player. And, it started off as an internship, and now, 14, 13 years later, I'm in the same industry, and I'm actually, started a business with the Furman guy that hired me 13 years ago. So anyways, we can talk more about that. But the industry that I'm in private equity. So we have a fund, and we invest in software companies.
Guess I can go next, following the age rank. So I'm Arvid. I did a econ Spanish double major. I'm in Atlanta as well. I've been here ever since I graduated in 2008. I do remember, I don't want to equate what's happening now with the economy with what happened in 2008, but I do share a lot of sympathy with kind of what it's like to graduate into a recession and to people not hiring. So I definitely relate to that. My current role, I've been actually at the same company for the last 11 years. Started out as an analyst at a kind of almost like a consulting startup. There was about 2 of us at the time. And my title now is Senior Director of Product Development. And yeah, it's been I got pretty lucky, I would say. I think I'm the one who's perhaps, didn't, I again, sympathize with the questions in the poll. I didn't really know there was a network, how to engage with that network, and how to do it. And my current role in Atlanta is president of the Alumni Network here, the fan club. So one of the things that we're trying to address is precisely those kind of challenges or obstacles. Is how do we make ourselves visible? How do we kind of limit those barriers for students and grads to reach out to people and then have a network ready? So there's about 6,000 of us alumni in Atlanta, 10,000 total Furman families in Atlanta. So it's huge, obviously. So it's we have the benefit of size, and I'm glad to again address some of those questions during this webinar.
I can go.
Okay.
All right. Hey everyone. My name is Kristen Brockington, class of 2018. While I was at Furman, I was it's now politics and international affairs and communication studies major. What I do now is not necessarily related to my major, but as I'm getting deeper into my career, I'm seeing how a lot of those skill sets I've learned connect to it. But currently, I am a campus recruiting specialist at Deloitte, which is a global professional services firm. Been with the firm going on about 2.5 years now. I currently recruit for undergraduate students for technology and strategy consulting roles for either some of our summer leadership programs, our internship programs, and some of our full-time opportunities as well. My schools that I typically recruit for are for the AUC. So if you're familiar with historically Black colleges and universities, we have the AUC, which consists of Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, and Spelman. I recruit at the University of Georgia, and then North Carolina A&T State University, which is also an HBCU. During my time at Furman, I kind of touched on a lot of different areas. I cheered while I was there, which was so much fun. I was in housing for a little bit, was involved with the Riley Institute, heavily involved in admissions. So just kind of, got my feet wet in a lot of different areas of Furman. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
Thanks. Last but not least.
Yeah, my name is Brian Boda. I'm a class of 2014 graduate, currently up here in Washington, D.C., about 3 blocks right now from the National Mall. So all the fun you've seen in the news, that's flown over my house recently. I was, like I said, a political science major at Furman, followed Furman with a master's degree at the London School of Economics, and then followed that with 4 years in consulting. So was a senior consultant at Deloitte, actually. So part of the strategy and analytics practice there, working with the global public sector practice. So really trying to find that intersection of kind of the international affairs and business realm. And I've now actually get to put all that to use. I'm now at the U.S. Department of State. So I'm excited and happy to answer any questions along the way.
Great. Well, thanks y'all for introducing yourselves. Hopefully that gives everyone a bit of perspective as to who you are, your background, the industries perhaps that you're connected with or a part of. So we'll just kind of go right ahead and get into some of the questions that we want to ask you guys tonight. And this one would be great for all of you to maybe touch on. I know some of you may have touched on this a little bit already, but I'd love to hear if you have any examples about how the Furman Network has specifically supported or contributed to your career or professional success.
I'm happy to jump in there. I think there were kind of 3 phases that I've bucketed things into. It was the first, like the senior year at Furman of what the heck am I doing next? It kind of hits you like, oh, I actually have to come up with what the plan is. And so for me, it was do I go into industry or do I go into grad school? And it was through conversations with Furman alumni actually that helped direct me initially towards graduate school. I had done an internship up here in Washington, D.C. I was with the Office of the United States Trade Representative, essentially the body that's responsible for all trade policy for the United States. There's actually a woman who is the senior director for all agriculture trade. So anything that comes in and out of the United States that's food product, that's a Furman mom. And she was absolutely wonderful of talking me through the logic of, okay, grad school now, grad school later. What does that look like? So I think that was first stage. Second stage was then this kind of, okay, I finished graduate school or nearing the completion of graduate school. I needed to ask advice of people. I needed to ask those dumb questions of, what type of industry is even out there? Are there internships that I should be taking? I've got this degree from one school. I got a degree from another school. How do I actually turn that into a job? And so I was able to talk to some Furman alumni who are closer to my age and really sharpen the questions that I was asking and frame those questions really. And then I was able to pivot from asking for that advice to then asking for a job, having sharpened that skill to talking with folks who had been in industry for 10, 15 years and actually had the opportunity to make hiring decisions. But understanding that we had Furman alumni in each of those buckets of folks willing to talk to a student or a recent graduate was remarkably helpful.
In some ways, I mean, Brian's experience and my experience are very different. In what Brian described as a fairly systematic leveraging of the Furman network. I mean, I was irresponsible. I mean, like truly irresponsible. I mean, I was planning to go to grad school. That's what I was going to go do. The reason, there's 2 reasons why my career shifted. One, I finished Furman in December and grad school was going to start in August. So I had this 8-month period where I was bored out of my mind. I was like, I got to do something. So maybe I'll do this thing called an internship, which I didn't intern the entire time I was at Furman. I was a research fellow in the econ department, the Hollingsworth research program for a couple of summers, and that was great. And I stayed on campus every summer to be part of the football workouts and all that. So I was so unprepared, this idea that, hey, in college, you got to have an alumni network and you're preparing yourself for a job. I mean, it was irresponsible how unprepared I was. And so but the fact that I had this 8-month window before my grad school program started is what kind of in boredom was like, well, I should go do something out there. And the person that was helping me kind of navigate the business world was a person said, hey, you know, your university alumni base might be a pretty good place to start. That's what other, you know, ambitious people do. And so that's how I found, you know, the Furman guy that I got in business with 14 years ago. And, you know, I built my career with that person a little bit in a happenstance way. And I've kind of gotten lucky that somebody guided me in that manner. And the other part of it is, again, the little bit of luck is that I didn't end up getting into grad schools that I, for whatever reasons, I thought I should have gotten into, you know, so I've gotten rejected, and due to the rejections, I was like, well, you know, maybe I should go work. And so anyways, I love what I do. I love the industry that I'm in. Beyond, I speak about it the way I do because it's a little bit through dumb luck that I found myself doing something that I'm really passionate about and that I love, and I've been very fortunate to do. But man, I mean, in some ways I was so single threaded by my one Furman connection, and so much has come out of that, that if you take a systematic approach and take an unapologetic approach, I mean, here's the answer to every question. What should you do? You should be aggressive as you can be, and you should use a thing called Google. You know, how do I find somebody? It's like, well, you happen to have a really powerful tool, Google, or better yet, even I can be a little more specific, LinkedIn. Get really, and I mean like really familiar with LinkedIn, whether you're looking for a job or you're in a job and looking to learn from somebody else. Like, you know, you should open up Google and go into LinkedIn. That should be the place where you live. And if you're kind of unapologetic, aggressive, ambitious, and you use LinkedIn really well, you got like 90% of it figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd agree with all those things. I think I was probably one of the ones who didn't do those things when I graduated, and I wish I had. So I think I'd give that same advice as, you know, it's a numbers game. And I think in general, the Furman, you know, network is, I've never had a, you know, in my current position at least, but even before then, there was never a case where they didn't return an email or you know, point me in the right direction, or there wasn't some sort of support. So I think, you know, the hurdle is just kind of that first step of, how do I get over the, you know, either shyness or the initial kind of, you know, scaredness of how do I email this guy I've never talked to, or how do I get the connection? And yeah, I think be aggressive, be direct. Like, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm a 2020 grad. Here's what I want to do. I love to network. I'd love to get in touch, and I'm looking for a career in this kind of area. Can you introduce me? Can you help me? And I think that, again, that sort of inner voice that says, well, I don't really have much value to add to this person. Why would they reply to me? Just cut that out. So I think that's, you know, if I had to go back, and I don't know if this exists today at Furman, but if there's like a networking 101 or like a networking for dummies, like breaking it down into like, here's how you actually do these things, that would be a great thing to do. But, you know, I wish I had that as a 18-year-old, I guess, or a 22-year-old.
Yeah, and I agree with everyone. You know, I would have to say, through my experience, I really got connected to the Furman Alumni Network through the Furman Metropolitan Fellowship. So it was the summer of 2017, I was the Furman Metropolitan Fellow, and through that program, there was a group of Furman alum that are all based in New York and basically wanted to bridge that gap for students out in Greenville, South Carolina, to a metropolitan area like New York. And so throughout that process, they connected me with a lot of Furman alums that were in the industry that I was particularly interested in. And I, at that time, was interested in the news industry to kind of make up for my poli-sci communication major. And after that, I kind of realized that wasn't the route that I wanted to go into. But the crazy thing about that is I now work at Deloitte, and throughout my process of actually interviewing for a lot of different roles, one of the Furman alums, you know, offered to have an informational interview with me and to also review my resume. And we just kind of had like a whole resume workshop. And here I am now, you know, 3 years later after that, you know, experience, I'm now working on the same team as her at Deloitte. So the Furman Network, it is, you know, it's massive. It's crazy because you think of how small Furman is, and we pop up everywhere. Like even when I was applying for my Georgetown program, I was talking to one of the admission counselors there, and he was like, hey, I read your resume and I saw that you went to Furman. He was like, I was a Furman grad, and we just connected from that. So you just never know who you're connecting with, who even knows somebody, whether they're a Furman grad themselves or if they're, a Furman, relative, whatever it might be. But we can definitely get into it a little bit more. But the Furman Network has honestly just been truly grateful. And, like everyone's touched on, I've never experienced a time where a Furman alum hasn't been excited to talk to me or to help me in any type of way.
Awesome. Thanks for your perspectives about that. Glad to hear you all have had positive experiences one way or the other with the Furman Network. I'd love to know, and I know 3 out of the 4 of you are in Atlanta, with Brian being in DC, a little further away from campus. I'd love to know how you all stay connected with Furman, even though you are not in the Greenville area or even in the Carolinas anymore. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Sure. So DC, despite us being, 800 miles away, however far away we are, 8-hour drive, that's what it is, from Greenville proper. I mean, we've got 2,000 some odd alumni and first degree connections to the university up here. It is shocking. And the folks that you run into are in every imaginable industry up here. The heights of government, it's awesome. Really, really awesome to see. And they genuinely enjoy coming to Furman events, which is also surprising sometimes. I was at one not too long ago, and a 1-star general walks in the room. It's like, oh, hello, sir. Right? It's neat that folks are willing to give back to the university, and we've done some neat things up here in terms of building out programs to keep Furman students tied to alumni up here. So we've got a program actually. If you do an internship up in DC, you can get tied to an alumni, and that alumni is a guaranteed mentor. There's a very kind of like structured program that you could be part of. So there's a variety of ways to stay connected. But I think if you're looking to get into the DC market, definitely touching base with the fan club. They can then point you into the specific industries that you're interested in.
Cool. Arvid, can you talk a little bit more about the fan club and just how that works, and perhaps how a recent grad could get connected, or maybe even a student who is targeting some specific cities where we have fan clubs, how they could perhaps get connected?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's been kind of a great thing for me to kind of come back and sort of re-engage a bit with Furman and really kind of address some of the challenges that we talked about earlier of kind of making sure that the network is visible and that, we're kind of offering those tools or ways to network. But the way it works basically is I think almost every city by now, I think has a fan club and a fan club president. And that person essentially is kind of like your local go-to person. So they're kind of in one way or another plugged in to that city and can kind of help find the people. So I saw a question in the chat actually at the start of this thing: how do I get connected with somebody, in my interest of area of interest? Well, email the city that you want to be in and find the fan club presidents. I'm sure Kristen has that list somewhere, and say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm looking for. And I've had probably several dozen people even this year, and especially the last couple of months, email me with those kinds of that kind of email. So I will say one more or two more things. Pre-COVID, we had a pretty ambitious plan to kind of really go big in Atlanta. We had a lot of volunteer events. We were going to do like a Beltline cleanup kind of event with, bring your families, do a picnic. We had a lot of United games and Braves games and, the usual happy hours, of course, but really trying to engage in different ages, different types of events. That kind of went out the window, obviously. So we're kind of rebuilding the calendar for the latter part of this year. But, I think there's still an opportunity for these business breakfasts that we used to do, where basically we have a speaker and, the challenge is, of course, mirroring the networking aspect of it. But, I think, we can perhaps have some sort of informal, small groups or rotational groups. We have a lot of ideas we're kicking around in terms of how to really engage and network during this sort of social distancing and stay at home time. But again, reach out to the fan club presidents. They'll kind of plug you in. And I think each one of those people has a number of activities or events or webinars, I guess, at this point to really kind of act as that way to engage and bring everyone together. Yeah, I think that's kind of the role of the fan clubs, I think. I'll say one last thing, part of why I'm doing this too with the fan clubs is, when I was, again, back in 2008 or 7, even, I didn't know this existed. So again, kind of want to almost, alleviate that challenge that everyone has or used to have when I was at Furman, of kind of being aware of what's out there and really having someone kind of come to the table and say, hey, I'm here, just, please reach out to me and make yourself known. So.
I mean, to some extent, to a large extent, if I look at kind of my life in chapters where I've spent significant amount of time, where I've dedicated something to a place or a period of time in my life, and I kind of sold out for something, and vice versa, Furman is definitely there. I mean, that's a chapter of my life where I spent 4.5 years, where I have a tremendous amount of loyalty, and I'm in an industry that's the ultimate kind of, I don't know if it's pretentious, but it's like the resume of resumes. Like, how many world-class institutions can somebody throw? Double Ivy League, triple Ivy League, this investment bank, that world-class. It's all about names. And again, I have a lot of ambition, and I'm unapologetic about Furman. Furman is at the essence of who I am. It is a part of my life. Furman has given me a ton. And I feel like whatever I'm doing, it's sort of traveling with me. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about, I'm getting kind of out of touch. I mean, look, I went to a fewer number of games because to some extent the center of focus for me is my relationship with the Furman athletics, for maybe somewhat obvious reasons, given the time commitment that is and the bonds that you form with teammates through that. I've probably gone to fewer games in the last 4 years because I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and life, it's hard to appreciate that for people that are in college, but that's a meaningful life change. But I don't feel any more out of sort of less in touch with Furman because I, haven't been to 2 home games to 3 home games around. I do think it's ingrained. It's at the essence of who I am, and some of my best friends are from my Furman days, and the benefits that I derive in my career have direct relationship to Furman. So I think it is, I think it's imperative for me to kind of carry Furman with me.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And I'm sure all of you have friends and prior classmates who are probably all over the country when you start thinking about it. And that helps too, that through all of you, there's a secondary network that we sort of see through LinkedIn, where you are all connected to other people who could potentially be helpful to recent grads and students as well. And that's certainly a benefit of connecting.
Kristen, actually, and question for Adi, based on something you just said. In a world of resumes, right? These double, triple Ivy Leagues, bank to bank to bank, consulting firm, whatever. Do you feel that Furman students are able to keep up?
Yeah, I do. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, and data driven about it, because all of us are in some type of data industries here where everybody's looking for objective support in answer. Most of us should inspire to answer questions based on evidence, despite some of the stuff that we see on TV where you can just kind of answer the things the way you want to prefer to answer. I don't have that. It's not like in my industry I've had 15 observations of Furman grads performing really well. I do know objectively, I went to a very rigorous grad school at University of Chicago. I mean, like with the curriculum that we got put through Furman, at least in my major in math and economics, I mean, that was every bit as challenging as the MBA program. I mean, and you can make any MBA program a joke. You can make it a summer camp, but in terms of a liberal arts education is so well suited. The education industry is going through a tremendous amount of pressure, and the value prop of school and even liberal arts is being really tested. But being well-rounded, in today's day and age, having a left brain and a right brain and an ability to think, is pretty important. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely do think where some people have gone and just kind of gotten names on their resume, you know, substance is really what carries somebody through a long career. Substance and desire, self-reflection, substance and desire to create their own personal portfolio around actually improving versus getting logos on a resume. That's lifelong learning, I guess. I mean, that's the definition of liberal arts. You know, you're in it for the intellectual curiosity, and I don't actually think a career is any different than that. A fulfilling career is about being inspired and intellectually stimulated.
I only asked because I just remember a level or a degree of intimidation. I think at first it's like, oh, do I have what it takes, right? And then you find out that ultimately you do, and you can hang with anybody. But it takes.
You know, I think the biggest shortcoming. I think the biggest shortcoming is our lack. Frankly, what Furman has not done well, and maybe the types of student, the kind of being unapologetic. Like everybody else was so prepped to be so aggressive. It's like, how do I connect with people? I mean, reach out to them. Like just be so unapologetic, and forget about Furman Network. I mean, the hell with Furman Network, any network, right? The world is your oyster. Like you can get to anybody. And what's the downside of reaching out to somebody, but they don't reply to you? It's like, so what? There's so many of them. There's one of you, and there's a crap load of us, Furman and Harvard and Yale and whatever, right? So the good thing is, like, you can just keep going through people, and somebody that you want to get to will respond. And I think that's the difference between us and them, you know, from the Ivy Leagues. They're so polished around it's like, oh, Harvard, you know, like I'm supposed to be reaching out to you. You're supposed to be replying to me. Why? Because you went to Harvard, right? So I think that's the only difference, but it's not the substance that we lack.
They've been doing case prep since first semester freshman year.
Yeah.
So this kind of lends itself well to sort of the next question I had, which was, you know, do you have any specific advice for the participants on how to initiate a conversation with an alum like yourself, who perhaps may be part of an industry that they're interested in, or, you know, trying to get their foot in the door first into a certain industry? And I think we stress to them that it helps to have these conversations with professionals who are already there, not only to help get your foot in the door, but really to help inform you about things you need to know and to help you figure out, is this the right field for me? Is this going to be the right fit? So there's certainly benefits to having those conversations, but to be honest, I think for them to hear that from you, that's going to be even more beneficial for them.
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in on that one. So I considered myself to be a very eager undergraduate student. I was in the Career Center quite a bit, just, you know, constantly trying to pull up like an alumni database, trying to figure out, you know, who was in what industry based off of my majors. But we talked about LinkedIn a little bit, and a really great tool that is on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with it, but there is a LinkedIn alumni tool. If you use that, you can actually go to the Furman University page. If you search in Furman University on LinkedIn, there's like an alumni tab on like the left side of the screen. And from there, you can kind of narrow down or filter the list of alum that currently have Furman University listed on their profile. So you can filter it by majors that they had, filter it by whatever, you know, like location, city location they're in, or company, or whatever it might be. And I think for one, that could be a great start, especially, you know, since you don't have that direct in-person access to the Career Center right now. But that's a great way to kind of get an idea of what are the different industries and who are alums that are in your particular area. In terms of actually reaching out, for one, whenever I have someone reach out to me on LinkedIn, if I see anything that says like Furman student or anything related to Furman, it automatically like draws my attention. You know, as a recruiter, I'm getting a lot of people that's messaging in my inbox, but as soon as I see Furman, I'm like, ooh, like go Dens, like who is this? So, you know, just for one, just, you know, make sure you're being known that you are a Furman student. I think that just automatically piques the interest of any Furman grad. And then from there, you know, just being genuinely curious, I think are the things that draw the conversations, or the conversations that I remember the most are the ones where students are genuinely curious about what you do, how they can get there, or just any questions that they might have. You know, I think those are, you know, the most beneficial ones. And I have to say, the job that I have now as a campus recruiter started off as an informational interview. I, you know, had a conversation with a Furman alum. She was like, send me your resume. Are you interested in the Atlanta office? I was like, yeah, I love Atlanta. That's where I'm from. Had an informational interview at like 10 o'clock that morning. And by 3 o'clock, I had my first round interview and secured my job within a week. So, you know, you never know what those informational interviews could actually lead to.
Crystal, I was going to bring this up, but you brought it up first. Can you talk about what an informational interview is, perhaps for participants who are new to that concept, and sort of how you go into planning for having one of those with a potential networking contact?
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of look at an informational interview being like a reverse interview. You're really reaching out to somebody that is in a particular area that you're interested in, and really just learning about how they got there, what do they do, what is their day-to-day, do they have any advice? You know, I feel like I've never gone into it thinking like this conversation is going to be an interview. Like, I want to know, do you have a job right now? That, yes, that kind of builds up the conversation, but that initial informational interview kind of is based off of getting to know their industry. What does their day-to-day look like? You know, what are some challenges that you might see in your role? And do you have any advice for me that's a student that's interested in your particular role? Like, what advice do you have that I could do to get to the step that you're in now? So it's kind of like a reverse interview, which is pretty cool.
It's like perfect description. And something we do stress to students when we meet with them and encourage them to do informational interviews is we tell them, you do not go into those informational interviews asking for a job or asking for an internship. It is mainly to gain information and to learn something, in hopes that you're building a connection, and that could lead to the contact wanting to help you further, whether that be for offering referrals or perhaps passing a resume along. So I think that's an important lesson too, for a takeaway, that it's just to get information.
And just to go off of that too, like, don't think that just because, you know, if you reach out to a Furman alum and they're like, hey, like, I'm not in the exact area that you're interested in, like you kind of mentioned, Kristen, they can connect you to somebody else that can also have that conversation with you. So either it can lead to a direct path, or it can be a bridge into someone else that might have a little bit more power to kind of make those hiring decisions. So they're great.
Yeah, I mean, even just the tactical tip around when you reach out to somebody is, at the end of the day, I mean, again, let's be honest, Furman or not Furman, you want to get to talk to the right person that takes interest in you. And always it helps to start with somebody you have connection with, which in this case is Furman. But if you reach out to that person, even just saying, you know, if it's not you, could you put me in touch with somebody that can help me? I mean, they in that way are helping you and maybe putting you in a more productive conversation than, you know, maybe even talking to the person that you talk to, but even being explicit about that. If it's not you, can you put me in touch with that? That may go a long way. And you put it on them. You put it on them to do something. And because if they turn you down, I mean, look, people will turn you down. But if like a Furman alum after one or two, a couple of reach outs really doesn't respond to you, it's kind of like shame on them. I mean, it doesn't mean that everybody should give you the time of the day. Everybody should take out, because I mean, there's some people in this industry that are working a lot, and you should be self-aware enough about reach out to this person versus this person, you know, and you should be prepared, you know, versus, hey, I'm interested in business. Like, tell me about business. Like, do a little more, right? You got time. Somebody else might not have time. But like, if somebody just keeps rejecting him, it's like, you know, it's kind of a loser, you know. It's like they can reply to you and say, hey, I'm pretty busy, or point you in a different direction. But if somebody from Furman just flat out rejects you, it's, you know, kind of shame on them. The good thing is there's a lot of us and there's a lot of people in this world again. So being apologetic, but do invest some time in research and interest. aligning your interest and your self-awareness in, or at least pointing yourself a little further than wherever you are and whoever you reach out to, it translates, right? You're going to have a better match. Your reason to get on the phone with them is going to be more productive. You know, it will come across while you're reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, there was that having to figure out, okay, what is the right level of person to talk to at what point in my search, right? It's like if I went immediately to the partner at the consulting firm, it's like that's going to move real quick, and I had better be prepared. And if you are not prepared, you have lost it. So how do you have the conversation with somebody who's like 3 years out of Furman, who's in that same firm, and then you have that conversation with someone who's like, I don't know, 5 to 7 years out of Furman, and is like managing a small team and has probably sat on some interview panels. And then you're like, okay, now I'm ready. I've done all this work. Let's go talk to the partner. Because once you pull that last card, it's like, we're going. And you got to be ready to go.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a theme here that preparation is important, and that you need to kind of put some thought into how you're going to approach these conversations and these asks. And I think the more informed and polished you are about it, the more likely the person's going to want to help and think that you're top notch and want to help you move forward in whatever it is that you're trying to get some help with. That's great advice. I'd love to know, I mean, all of you are on LinkedIn. How many of you were, and for some of you who graduated a few years earlier, I know for me, when I was in college, LinkedIn was not around. And over 10 years of working in career services, we've gone from, you know, informing students about what LinkedIn is to now students actually recognizing it and being aware of it during initial conversation. So I'd love to know how active are you on LinkedIn? Do you think it's your industry that plays a role in that as to how active you are? I'm sure, Crystal, you're on LinkedIn all the time for your work. But I'd just be curious to hear how often you use LinkedIn, the benefits you have felt from that, and if you would encourage the students to be on that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'd say certainly for my line of work, it's you know, I am responsible partly for business development, so it is in some ways kind of a, you know, like I said, a numbers game. Obviously, you want to have the same kind of things everyone was talking about, kind of a short, you know, here's who I am, here's what I'm looking for, you know, kind of be prepared if they actually reply and be quick about it. I think promptness is a big thing in terms of kind of getting the attention and making good on it. You know, for us too, you know, we use it partly to kind of just communicate within our industry. We're big in kind of media and a couple other big industries, but, you know, we always share kind of insights and put, you know, thought papers, white papers out there. So it's a way for us to kind of get, you know, momentum and, you know, people who are kind of looking for best practices or case studies, we're kind of a part of that. So I think in terms of, for me, you know, business development is a key thing. In terms of recruiting, obviously, I think, you know, Crystal would speak more to that aspect, but, you know, even for recent students or recent graduates who reached out to me on LinkedIn, I always try to reply and just say, give some advice, or, you know, feel free to contact me or put them in touch. So I think whether it's recruiting or looking for a job or you know, business development, it's pretty critical. But yeah, I use it pretty much daily, just in some form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
I'm just gonna say I'm admittedly horrible at LinkedIn. The only reason I got your email is because it has an auto forward to my normal email. So I am admittedly horrible at it, but I do get a lot of Furman students via people, either from the Alumni Network up here, or just email out of the blue. That's the way that I've been able to stay in touch with many folks.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm a recruiter, so I use LinkedIn quite a bit. It's kind of like my Instagram, which is fun, but go to LinkedIn quite a bit. I will say when I do find Furman students that reach out to me, one of the first things that I do is I go to their profile just to kind of get like a general idea of like, okay, like, you know, what have they been involved with? Like, have they listed like their major or what's in their bio? Do they have their resume there? And so it kind of helps me to be able to know how to approach the conversation if they are reaching out to me. So one of the things that I will say is, you know, try to keep your LinkedIn, if that is going to be your primary tool, try to keep it as updated as you can. If you've gone on like a, you know, a pretty cool like traveling experience or whatever it might be, you know, feel free to update that on your LinkedIn to kind of show a little bit of personality. And I'm saying this from a recruiter perspective. And then also too, you know, if you have any articles or things that you're reading about and you think this is interesting, feel free to share that. And, you know, just finding ways that you can differentiate yourself from other people that also might be reaching out to you. So yeah, I use LinkedIn, and I must say, if anyone, even if I just get like a cold email from someone and they're like, hey, I'm interested, whether it's Furman or not, I typically go to LinkedIn first to kind of see, do our interests align, and how can I be of assistance to you?
I'm also curious, Crystal, as an expert, like, what do you not do? Like, what's like the biggest or top 3 don'ts on LinkedIn?
Ooh, top 3. Well, I have a really big one. So I actually had a candidate or a student. They didn't go to Furman. I would believe a Furman student would not do this. But I had a student reach out to me that was interested in a program that Deloitte was putting on, and they attached their cover letter. And in the cover letter, it had our competitor company as the title, and also had the contacts of people within that firm, the other firm that they were interested in. And my response was, you know, I'm glad that you're reaching out to people. However, I do not think I can be of assistance since you are interested in our competitor firm. I would suggest you reach out to them. So for one, make sure that you are, you know, reaching out to the right person. If you are sending, you know, we always say to have different resumes for each job, but I mean, we can also be real and know that we don't do that as often. But if you are recycling a resume, just make sure you are updating it to go to the correct person. So I feel like that would probably be the main thing that I would say is a huge don't when you're out.
Yeah, I mean, I began this early on saying, highlighting LinkedIn as one to use. We're obviously all by where we come from, so that's why you have a panel and, you know, my bias versus Brian's bias. And but in our industry, in the private equity venture industry, there isn't a single piece of technology that has changed the industry more than LinkedIn. I mean, it is the place where we spend more than Google, right? We're in the information technology industry where, you know, superstars matter, meaning like people that know a lot about something, like you want to find that person. A place to do that is LinkedIn, right? You know, you invest $100 million into a company, you want a really good person to run that business. You want the CFO to be really good. You want the chief marketing officer. Like, where do you go? I mean, it's LinkedIn, right? You're about to invest in a company that has no bricks that you can go touch. It's ones and zeros that I don't know what they mean. Software. It's people. People are the asset. What do you do? First thing is like, you work where? I'm not even looking at that person. I'm looking at the company on LinkedIn, not on their website. Literally, LinkedIn is a better source, is a more insightful source about a company in certain industries, right? A metal bending industry, a farm, you know, may not have a LinkedIn profile. A technology company, they're going to have a LinkedIn profile. Every one of their employees is going to be on there. You want to know who works for that company? It's right there. And the other thing, I don't want to come across a little too corporate or non-spontaneous. You know, there shouldn't be anybody that's listening to this call that you should ever talk to, you know, until you graduate from Furman and for some time after that. You should ever have a business discussion with somebody that you don't look up on LinkedIn to know something about. Like, why not? It's 30 seconds at your fingertips for you to go into a call blind and have a chance to look like kind of an unprepared, you know what, you know, on a call where somebody's doing you a solid. Like, take 30 seconds to go look that person up on LinkedIn because it's right there. I'm telling you, get really, really good on LinkedIn. And the other thing that's not LinkedIn is get your crap off the internet. You're funneling a beer, don't put it on, you know, it can't, it's, you know, it's not worth it having it on Facebook. You're about to welcome yourself to the professional world. And I'm not telling you what you should do and should not do socially, but I mean, you know, if you're trying to go for a competitive job, the stakes for hiring even somebody at a low level and mishiring somebody, it's pretty damn costly, right? It's just, if you know, big firm, little firm, hiring somebody that doesn't work out, it's just a pain. Like somebody else has to work harder. So people are putting a lot of effort into trying to find the right candidates. And then people are using Google to find, you know, things about people. So be careful what exists about you on there. But what you do in your free time, I'm obviously not telling you what to do. Just don't put it on the internet.
Important.
Or at least if you put it on the internet, be conscious that's on there. Somebody's going to find it. So I guess that's a better advice.
Yeah. I know someone in the Q&A had asked, you know, when is it appropriate to join on LinkedIn? I know we have an alumni group on LinkedIn that you can join, which is sort of just an affinity group. But also too, I would encourage any students on here who are currently at Furman that the sooner the better, because that is sort of like your living resume. So everything you're getting involved in, your student organizations, your leadership roles, your volunteer experience, the awards and honors you're gaining, the classes you're in, the projects you're doing, your engaged learning, all of that can already has a place on LinkedIn. So all that to say, the sooner the better. Don't feel like you have to wait till you graduate. If anything, you're doing yourself a disservice if you do. And we can help you with that if you need help developing the LinkedIn profile. You know, someone also asked a question, kind of shifting a little bit. They asked, in what cities do you all find the most alumni? All of you are in, I would say, some of our more popular cities for alumni. To specifically answer that question, the Greenville-Spartanburg area is the biggest, followed by Atlanta, then Washington, D.C., Charlotte, Columbia, and Charleston. But we do have alumni sprinkled in everywhere. You know, I know most of you are in Atlanta, Brian being in DC, but based on what you know and maybe what you've kind of observed being a part of Furman for years now, having friends in other areas of the country, I think there's a little bit of anxiety about, you know, does the Furman brand carry itself in other areas of the country? And if so, you know, is it as valuable to be networking in other areas of the country? You know, it's pretty easy to network in Atlanta as a Furman Paladin, but, you know, let's say you are in DC or Philadelphia or Boston or New York or LA. Do you have any thoughts on that, just based on what you know, what you've observed, what your friends, classmates have observed over the years?
To answer the DC question, I mean, we've got enough Furman alumni in enough places across DC that we can find somebody who can get you close. If it's not the exact thing, it's close. And they're going to be a senior enough level that they can actually have a real conversation with you. I've found that across the board, any industry up here. Actually, like I found that in London as well, right? Like I had Thanksgiving dinner with Furman alum in London. It was awesome. But you go, it's amazing just how Furman alum come out of the woodwork to help other Furman students and alumni.
Absolutely. I've seen a couple questions coming in about the fan clubs. And I know Arvid's been responding to a few of them through the chat. I guess, Arvid, what's the best way you think to stay up to date on local fan club updates and events?
Yeah, I think officially there's I put some links in the chat there, but it's there's a Furman alumni.edu fan club page. So we've got, I think, a list of everybody who's every city with the fan club, and it should have a link to everybody's email address, who is the kind of point person there. So that's one place. I think there's also kind of like a schedule or a calendar that should be in there. And again, I know COVID aside, it should be updated. That's one place. The Facebook groups. So again, put some links in the chat, but that's another place to kind of look for announcements. Usually it's a quicker kind of, update there than maybe the website, just because usually myself or one of our social media VPs will post there directly and kind of try to keep things up to date. And then I think, and Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everybody who's a graduate is like automatically opted in to be on the email list. I don't know if that's true or not, but there is, I think, an email list somewhere. If you don't know how to get on it, just reach out to me or your kind of point person at Furman, and we'll add you to it. But usually we'll kind of try to send a reminder or a quarterly or monthly update of here's the kind of activities we're planning for the month. We'll send reminders. So again, one of the things I think that was a challenge historically, and even observing being in Atlanta for 10 years, I've only recently re-engaged in the fan clubs. That was kind of one of the biggest complaints is just, what's the official page? Where do I get the info? Where are you guys? So we're trying to be as visible as possible and kind of make that as clear as possible.
Yeah. And I think if you don't know where to start, just always remember the Alumni Association is there. So we have great colleagues over there. They can help you get connected. So if you don't know where to start, don't be hesitant about reaching out to them. They want you to connect and they want you to continue to be engaged with Furman throughout your life. And also too, I'd encourage you to keep your information updated with the alumni office so that you're getting sent opportunities that are relevant to wherever you are geographically. So that's important too to think about. I see another question coming in. This one's directed towards Brian, and it could potentially even, Crystal, you might be able to share on this a little bit. I know there's some industries that rely more on networking than others to get your foot in the door. And I think consulting is certainly one of those. So this question's asking, Brian, what were some of the steps you first took when getting into consulting? Perhaps how did you get your foot in the door with that industry? How did you find out about it? What gravitated you towards it? Were there connections you made that maybe helped you get started in that industry?
Yeah, I had no idea what consulting was when I was at Furman. Zero clue. I kind of, you hear about it, but like, what does that actually mean? And then it wasn't actually until grad school when all of a sudden there's this like huge swarm of people all talking about consulting. And you're like, oh, well, they're talking about consulting. Like maybe I should be talking about consulting too. And it was actually, I was able to reach out to some Furman alumni who had consulting by their name on a couple of databases. It was actually parents of my friends as well at Furman who were able to make some introductions. And so before long, I was able to have some of those more senior level conversations just to get an idea of what the industry was. And then after that, I was, and where I wanted to kind of play in the consulting realm, then it was a matter of, okay, actually figuring out what a case study was and preparing for a case study, which again, I had never heard of, had no idea even how to begin to do that very formulaic thing, but is really a key to the industry. So that's a non-answer really. I stumbled face first into it, but it was through Furman alumni kind of like picking me up along the way that it turned out well.
Yeah, I can touch on that as well. So the thing with a lot of your big global consulting firms is the recruiting process, unfortunately, is very targeted based on the actual target schools that they recruit for. And unfortunately, which I hate, Furman, at least for Deloitte, is not a direct target pipeline school that we recruit for. What that means, I mean, it does limit the opportunities of coming straight out of undergrad. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it really requires some strong networking. And that's when it, like Brian was talking about earlier, trying to making connections with people that are a little bit more senior in the firm can kind of help to guide that process for you. But I have seen a lot of Furman alum that will graduate from Furman and then attend grad school and try to go to, a grad school where it kind of does have that direct pipeline into, a larger consulting firm. Like, we're talking about like Deloitte or Accenture, EY, things of that sort. But again, like it's possible. Start those conversations, start, figuring out, like I know Deloitte has a really great tool on their website called Find Your Fit, where you basically just answer a bunch of questions that ask what are your interests, and it kind of helps to align you where you can potentially fit in the firm, and use that as a starting point of reaching out on LinkedIn and finding people that are within that area, and just saying like, hey, I'm a Furman student, I know this isn't a direct pipeline, but I'm interested in learning a little bit more about what you do. Can you potentially put me in contact with someone else that could, help guide me as well? So it can be done, but that's when that networking really comes in handy.
Mm-hmm. I guess again, close to ending time, we're probably going to run over a little bit, but I just want to ask, I saw a question come through that asks, is it acceptable to connect with someone who works within a company you are interested in, but not necessarily the same department or area? So I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And there was another question that came through earlier this week where they were asking, in your job searching process, did you intentionally seek out companies where you knew there were maybe some Furman graduates there? So just kind of similar but different questions. Number one, do you think it's beneficial to seek out companies where there already are Furman grads? And is that a good way to kind of initiate your networking? But also two, is it appropriate to network within a Furman alum who's maybe doing something totally different than you, but they are at a company that interests you?
Yeah, I'll say from my perspective, we're still a pretty small firm. We're about 50 of us, mostly economists and data scientists as consultants. We kind of have two big divisions, kind of our analytics team and our kind of more data science digital team. And so we've had a lot of cases where someone reaches out to me, or they may apply for one sort of wing of the company, and they might funnel through to the other wing. So I think, at least for our size company and what we do, I think there's no harm in reaching out. And I've had folks reach out to me, they don't want to do science, but they want to get into the more traditional consulting that we do. And they reach out to me and say, hey, I'm looking for something other than what you're doing, but can you help me, get an interview or just reach out to the right people? And I'm, of course, glad to do it. And on the kind of, the Furman thing, having grads already at the company, I haven't done it personally, but two of the hires we made did that basically. They, found my name in some list somewhere. And we also, I think as a company, we try to visit Furman once a year or so and kind of make ourselves known and do like a case study session with the econ department, math department, business department. And so that's a way for us to kind of recruit and get resumes. But that's exactly how two of our kind of hires were connected, and we hired them. They've been great. And they're actually married now too in Chicago. So I'll take credit for that too.
Be a matchmaker in more than one way.
I can jump in.
Hey, I have a hard time advising. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Crystal.
I was just going to say, what was I going to say? I was just going to say that, when reaching out to, or let me go back. So in terms of applying or looking for jobs directly, if a Furman alum is there, I want to say, don't limit yourself to that. You could be missing out on opportunities, even if it is a smaller firm and there's not a Furman alum there, I wouldn't say completely take that company off of your list. But I will say, a lot of times if you are going through the networking route, they will more than likely guide you to a company that does have at least one Furman connection, or even if it's not a Furman connection, like someone that has been a very good, role model or mentor to a Furman person. So, like I have to say for Deloitte, our team has a lot of Furman people in it. And even whenever we have someone that transitions out of a role, at least for recruiting, the recruiting manager comes to us and they're like, hey, do you have any more Furman people? Because you guys are amazing. So don't limit yourself, but I can say that if you do end up in an area or a place where there are Furman alum, you'll definitely have that support system there as well.
I mean, basically I was going to say something along similar lines. I mean, it's hard to advise anybody, you should target your job search based on where Furman people are, or based on where Harvard people are, or based on University of Georgia people are. I mean, like, it's that there's no destination in being with Furman people, right? I love Furman. I mean, my best friends are Furman, but like, there's no, like, you're not seeking career around, like, I need to be around Furman people. You're seeking career around, and Furman is a tool, a potential tool, but that's all it is. Obviously, our discussion here is about how to use that tool, but I mean, that's all it is. It's one of many tools, and, there's no kind of there's no end goal in just Furman for the sake of Furman. It's, you know, chase your career and leverage Furman to the best of your ability, but don't shape your career around Furman.
Cool. I'd be curious to know too, just, breaking a little bit away from the Furman network, are there any ways that all of you also engage in networking outside of Furman? Are there any professional associations you're a part of? Are there any sort of social networks in your cities that have helped you build your networks as a professional?
Yeah, for me, again, it's very industry specific, but for us, we're, like I said, we're big in media. So our company are members of a number of organizations, International News Media Association. There's another one that's more international, but we also are kind of expanding in wine and beverage. So again, for us, it's really about kind of attending those conferences, and it's kind of these industry trade groups. And so part of my job is also to kind of, again, attend these conferences or attend these events, introduce myself, ask about what's going on. And it's really getting a chance to, you're not necessarily trying to sell on the spot and sign a contract, but you're making the connections to say, okay, let me talk to this guy, let me say something kind of memorable, and maybe we can follow up later and have that more deeper discussion. Or they can point me to a person who's, would be helpful for me. And likewise, I, always make myself available as a resource of, if somebody's got a problem in this area, I know, 10 of my clients who have the same exact problem, I can connect them, and I've built some rapport, or at least some goodwill. So to me, it's critical. And in terms of specific organizations, I again probably defer to some of the other folks, but for me, it's mostly built around our kind of target industry areas we want to be in, or services we want to be providing for our clients.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I would, beat this into people as much as possible. The world is decentralized to your benefit. You got Google and you got a phone. And in fact, we can't even be the same place anymore. I mean, like, it's the definition, we can't even be in the same room. Like, it is truly flat in that regard. Doesn't mean you can talk to everybody and everybody wants to talk to you. I can't talk to everybody and people don't want to talk to me. And so, but it is, the mindset is you can find anybody in the world that you want to find, and you can get in touch with them. I mean, literally, first initial, last name at the domain name of their company is 90% correct. Like, you have an email. I mean, I can give you 3 syntax that is 99% of people's emails. Like, you don't even, and if that's too much effort, you can actually pay, I don't know, like 10 cents for. You can Google like how to find somebody's email. You can pay 10 cents to get somebody's email. Like, you can literally get in touch, get somebody's contact information for just about anybody in the world. And so I think it's a lot more about the mindset versus this organization or that organization. It's like, you got Google, you got your ambition, and you better prepare yourself to be some jobs in some industries require more selling and more business development, and some like software development require punching ones and zeros. But no matter what you do in life, the more that you can present yourself, the more you can sell yourself, the more you can sell your organization, the more you can sell your team, the better off you'll do in life. Obviously, if you go in a job that's a sales job, you best know how to sell it really well. And if you're going to code ones and zeros, you probably got to be a pretty good ones and zero coder. But nobody regrets for developing more sales skills over their career, irrespective of who they are. You got to present yourself. You got to present that requires practice. It requires awareness. It requires getting enough at-bats and interviews and informational interview. It requires extracting information from people, right? Call it an interview, call it whatever you want, but man, I mean, how valuable of a skill is it? Match you with anybody and go try to extract information from that person. Like, there is no job in the world where that's not a valuable skill, right? And so you got to get out there. You got to get talking to people. You got to drop the fear factor. You got to start developing your kind of commercial user interface.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say for a DC specific example, I mean, DC, the currency here is relationships. I mean, New York City, it's the dollar signs, but DC, it's definitely, can you pick up the phone and call somebody? And so because of that, there's definitely a mentality of, if you're getting a call from somebody, well, yeah, you might as well answer it to see what the question is. So the ways that I have found that has worked is be interested and be interesting. If you can nail those two things, you can usually carry a conversation on with just about anybody. I mean, even if it's not even about a job, maybe they're just a really interesting person, and before you know it, you've now met somebody through somebody else, and now you've just landed like a really awesome community you never knew existed. And I can tell countless stories of that exact thing happening. I met one person, and then like three people later, it's like, okay, there was actually the group of people I thought were coolest, but it took maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but you made it.
That's great advice. Be interested and be interesting. I'm going to steal that one from you, Brian. Any other sort of advice that you guys want to offer, closing thoughts before I kind of get into tips and wrapping things up tonight?
Enjoy college. It's as good as it's gonna get. It's all downhill after that. No, I was so encouraged when I saw so many 2022. I was like, how great it is that you got more time in college, and it's just so awesome in so many different ways. The freedom, the resources, the social aspect, you know, so much of your career ahead of you, and so much time to figure out what to do in your career. But it is an amazing time, and this thing will pass. Obviously, it'll pass, and you'll have more of your college experience the way you wanted. There's obviously so many silver linings about this too, and so many opportunities that are created because of this environment that we're in. But ultimately, you'll still have a good aspect of your college experience return at some point. So yeah, love your college time and get the most out of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was gonna say a big lesson for me that I had to learn, as much as we're talking about like reaching out, networking, all of this stuff, like don't get so focused on that. Like you can really overwhelm yourself and drain yourself if this is what you're thinking about every single day. So, try to, again, enjoy your college experience, spend time with family, and then also set out some time for networking. But the biggest thing that I had to learn myself was, sometimes your Furman connections might have a better idea of where you could potentially land in and what would be a good fit for you. Like I came into Furman thinking I wanted to go to med school. Then I was like, nope, I want to go to law school. Nope, I want to go to news industry. Did an internship, didn't work out. So then I was in senior year, like what in the world am I supposed to do? And it took having conversations with Furman alum to kind of tell them my passions, my interests. And from there, instead of focusing on what is a direct path for my major, I focused more on what was a passion for me, what did I enjoy, and that actually led me to a career that I actually, enjoy every single day. So.
Hey, I have one more advice that's actually career related, that wasn't like, motherhood, apple pie, have fun in college, that I feel pretty passionate about. If you're not experiencing a good chunk of failures and rejections, this is really not a cliche. This is not the Michael Jordan, even though the Last Dance was awesome, I fail, and that there's greatness in failure. But seriously, if you're not getting rejected and you're not failing, it's okay to we can benchmark our different ambitions. But I mean, if you really have a lot of ambition for a job, for a career, and you're not getting rejected, you are unequivocally doing something wrong. The number of schools that have rejected me, I literally cannot apply to Harvard anymore. I have maxed out the number of times that Harvard, arts and sciences, whatever program, maybe I can go into something else. But, the number of jobs that have rejected me, the number of schools that have rejected me, the number of teams that have rejected me is a lot. I can provide a list if somebody needs it. So please you know, if you have ambition, please, unless you experience a rejection, you're really not really testing that ambition enough.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that last comment, especially, you know, again, I remember when I graduated in 2008, I sent probably, I think I still have them somewhere, but it was over 200 resumes that I sent out between May and maybe I think November, December, and it took until December to get hired. So I would just hunker down and get ready for a lot of, you know, rejection. But, you know, again, other than COVID, the economy is strong. So it's just a matter of time, and it is a numbers game. So I think besides that, you know, get ready for rejection. It's a numbers game. The other devices, I think it's been said, but prepare and kind of get over any tentativeness or fear.
Reach.
Awesome. Well, all of you have provided some great perspective and advice. And I just want to supplement that with just a few things I want to make sure that our participants are aware of some of the different ways that Furman can help them, whether they are a current student or a member of the class of 2020 or somebody who's graduated years down the road. The Furman community is still here to help. And always here to help. So keep in mind that the Malone Center of Career Engagement, where I work, formerly as the Career Center or the Office of Career Services, we have evolved quite a bit in recent years, but we are here to help. We have a ton of tools and resources. We can help you get started on LinkedIn. We can help you think about a networking strategy, help you think about maybe where there are some companies where we do have some Furman alumni. So we're a great place to start. We're here throughout the summer, setting up virtual appointments, learning how to use Zoom. So just know we're here and available. There's a new program called the Alumni Connections program, and that's sort of our foray into having a mentoring program at Furman. And so Melanie Armstrong, she is our master matchmaker, and she kind of looks at our Furman alumni and what their skills and industries and expertise are, and she can match you with a Furman alum who matches interest areas. And that could be a one-time informational interview, or it could be more of a long-term mentoring relationship. So that's something that we encourage students to take advantage of now and into the future. Melanie Armstrong can help you with that. We've talked here and there about these alumni networking lists. And so just know that the Office of Alumni and Parent Engagement, or the Alumni Association, they can provide you with a list of alumni that relate to certain criteria that you designate on a intake form. So just know if you would like to receive one of those forms to request a contact list, you can reach out to the Alumni and Parent Engagement Office. And then finally, you know, we were talking about these new fan clubs, or the Furman Advantage Network Clubs that are in a variety of popular cities throughout the country. And even though this is still sort of a new initiative, they're really growing. And it's a great way to just sort of, as Arvid said, get connected, you know, build your social circle, network, get involved, and have fun in the city you're in. And if you're curious about a city and you just want to learn more about it, I'm sure there's tons of people in those clubs that can really offer perspective about the best places to live or companies that you might want to be thinking about. So, you know, whether you're a student who's going to be graduating in the next year, or you're a recent grad who's still on the hunt, you know, reach out to the fan clubs, and you can see there it's furman.edu/alumni to learn more about that. Hold on here, guys. I have one more slide. Let's see. And just a few other networking tips, and some of this we already talked about. You know, again, when reaching out to alumni or any networking contact, you know, be prepared. We talked about this a lot tonight. You want to have your list of questions ready. You want to go on LinkedIn. You know, as Adi said, you have every ability to research these people ahead of time. So take advantage of that. We have more information on the Malone Center website about how to conduct an informational interview. So we have a guide. That's a good place to start. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to me or somebody else in the Malone Center. We'll be happy to help you sort of navigate how to conduct an informational interview. Can't stress enough, develop a LinkedIn profile if you haven't already. We can help you get started with that too. We can offer LinkedIn resume critiques. We talked a little bit about the alumni search tool that is available through LinkedIn. So if you go in the search box on LinkedIn and you type in Furman University, you will see what is called our school page. And if you click on the alumni link on that school page, you'll see this awesome tool that lets you kind of narrow down where our alumni live, where they work, what they're still at, what they majored in. So that's a really easy way to kind of figure out where our alumni are and what they're doing. And if you need help with that, we can help you get comfortable with that tool as well. And also too, as Audie said, make sure all of your social media accounts are professional and that you're putting out positive self-branding about yourself, because I guarantee you, when you reach out to somebody, whether they're a networking contact, an alum, or a recruiter, they're going to look you up in a variety of ways. So you want to make sure you have a cohesive sort of brand about yourself that you're putting out there. Sorry. And finally, just to wrap up tonight, I want you guys to know that our next webinar is going to take place in July. So save the date for July 28th from 7 to 8 p.m. And it's going to be entitled, Where Have All the Jobs Gone? And we have an alum from the class of 2003, Dana Griffin. She's the Director of User Experience at Indeed.com. And she will share what impact the pandemic has had on the job market and how you may still be able to identify great opportunities by leveraging Indeed.com. So that'll be a great way to learn from an expert with a great search tool that we all are somewhat aware of. She's going to help us learn how to use that in an even more optimal way. So all that to say tonight, I just want to thank our panelists. You all were fabulous. And I know we could probably talk a lot longer about some of these topics, but I just want to thank you for your time. And we really appreciate you. And we're going to send a follow-up message to all the participants tonight. We will provide all of you with a recording of the presentation. We will do a drawing to see who has won some Furman swag for participating tonight. And we'll make sure that the participants at least are reminded of who the participants were. And we are going to encourage all the participants to if they want to reach out to you, to find you on LinkedIn. So we think that's a good takeaway, an action item from tonight. And if you have any participants, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the Malone Center for Career Engagement. You can see our email there on the slide. We're happy to help you. All right. So thanks again, participants. Really appreciate your time and effort and perspective tonight.
Yeah, really glad to be here, and thanks for listening to us.
Thank you.
Guys, have a good night.
You too.